Hi guys, and welcome back to Autism Journeys radio show and podcasts. Today I'm delighted to welcome Catherine Hallissey, who is a parent of five, a psychologist with more than 19 years experience working in the area of autism and parenting specifically. She also guest lectures at master's and doctorate level in UCC or University College Cork, and she regularly features on national and international news. So Catherine, thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Sharon. Thank you so much for inviting me onto your wonderful show.
I can't wait to gain some of your level of insight and knowledge. So I've got a load of questions to get through. So I'm going to get started straight away, if that's okay.
Great.
Perfect. So Catherine, your first question is, why did you decide to go down the route of child psychology to begin with?
Well, from a very young age, I knew I wanted to work with children. So when I was in preschool at age 3, I declared I was going to be a preschool teacher. And then when I was in primary school, I declared I'd be a primary teacher. And then it just evolved from there. So I always had a deep passion for helping children. And then when I went into university, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And I was doing science, and psychology was one of my options. And then from day one, I knew I was in the right place. So it's been a direct path really to where I am today.
Fabulous, fabulous. Catherine, I know that you have 5 children yourself, so I suppose that speaks
Yes.
to your passion around small people.
Yes, it does. I have 5 kids aged from 11 down to 5, and my twins, they just turned 5. So busy house, lots of fun and lots of chaos, and
Fab.
lots of opportunities to practice my psychology strategies.
Luckily, you're equipped with those. I know what it's like to be living as a parent in a very, very busy household. Although luckily,
Yes.
mine have moved on to that next stage, and I suppose that brings its own challenges. That's a conversation for another day, though. Can I ask you, Catherine? I know that you've worked for many years in the field of autism specifically, and in general psychology as well. Can I ask you first of all about what interests you specifically about autism?
I think that my interest in autism, ever since I first heard about autism, I've always been really fascinated with it. And I consider myself, even though I've been working in the area for such a long time, I really do consider myself a novice, because my understanding of autism has changed so much over the years. The way I understand it now is so different to years ago. And, I've been really fortunate to have many autistic people in my life who have been very generous to help me learn and change and grow as a psychologist. And I think the human condition overall is fascinating. And I don't really know why autism fascinates me so much, but it does. I think it's just a wonderful area to work in.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose when you speak to things changing all of the time, I suppose it really speaks to how research is a very, very big area, a very widely growing area where autism is concerned. And I'm absolutely delighted to see that finally people are actually looking at autism and looking at the strengths of autistic people and looking at ways to use those strengths to propel the autistic person forward, and acknowledging actually that the responsibility to change or to behave in a certain way or to communicate in a certain way, it doesn't lie solely in the lap of the autistic person, that it actually lies in the lap of all communication partners, and that we have responsibility as well to maybe accommodate the autistic person in their communication methods and means and so on. So I think you're absolutely right. I think that when we talk about autism, that anybody who says that they're an expert in autism probably isn't, with respect to that we are absolutely all kind of learning so much all the time, that our knowledge basis is changing so much that we never really move on from that novice point.
And that's so true, because over the years I've grown more and more humble. I think I thought I knew autism, and now I know it's just the tip of the iceberg. Just like, how well can we know anyone? And there's always been so much research into autism, but it was always a certain slant. And you speak about the strengths-based approach, and I just see this incredible change coming, and it's definitely not enough yet, but there is an incredible shift that I'm just so happy that has happened. And really just, I suppose we've got this strengths-based approach to all areas of psychology now, and it's just wonderful that it's coming into autism. And there are so many autistic researchers researching themselves, and also the explosion in first person accounts. Personally, that has really helped me as a psychologist, reading the work of autistic psychologists, autistic adults, and I have experienced huge growth from that myself.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I suppose, Catherine, moving on from that, then I know that you do a huge amount of work around the nervous system and so on and so forth, and how that impacts upon one's ability to be able to regulate and so on. So, can you explain how the nervous system does impact upon a child's physical or emotional response?
I think that the way I look at it is that a child's behavior is a window into their nervous system. So if that is your foundation, how you view all of us, whether it's a child or an adult, it's a window into all of our nervous system. So, kids do well if they can, and adults do well if they can. So if something is going on that a child or an adult is struggling, the first step is, okay, what's happening at the nervous system level? It really takes you out of that immediate reaction.
Yeah,
And the I have loads of different mantras, but the one is be curious, not furious, and curious about what's actually happening within the nervous system, and looking at regulation, from like coming right back to regulation of the nervous system, relate, this connection, and then into reasoning. What often happens is we start with reasoning, and then we might have the regulation as an afterthought. But actually, we all know that, think of yourself sometime when you're very upset. It could be that you're sad or angry. You actually can't reason to anywhere near the same level. So if we can come right back into regulation so that we can then relate and reason.
yeah, absolutely. So, kind of, I suppose, attuning to the individual first and foremost, and then moving from there through those other steps. But initially, looking at either attuning to your own feelings or attuning to the little person who is in front of you, and just seeing what's going on, what's happening in that very moment for them.
And step one is always actually attuning to yourself. So step one is get calm yourself. You know,
Absolutely.
emotions are contagious. You want them to catch your calm rather than you catching their chaos. So
Absolutely.
get calm yourself. If you're not calm, you can't be that emotional container. You can't help somebody co-regulate if you're not regulated yourself. So step one is practice the pause. You know,
Absolutely.
do whatever you need to do to get calm so that then you can meet your loved one as your best self,
Yeah.
and so that you're much more able to, first of all, think regulation, but then actually help them regulate. Because really, we're just trying to coach our loved ones through the stages to where they can reason themselves. Because once you get to about the age of 3 or 4, you actually know the right thing to do. I say right in inverted commas, I mean the expected thing for the situation.
Yeah.
So if a child is doing something that isn't what's expected at that moment, then it's probably not because they don't know. It's probably because the demands of the situation have exceeded their coping skills.
Yeah.
So step one, get calm yourself so that then you can help your child get calm, so that then you can see, is there a skill you need to teach, or is it just you maybe need to look at the environment, how you can help the environment support them, and just really working through that on a step-by-step basis, but always beginning and ending with the nervous system.
Perfect. And I suppose, just to say to anybody tuning in today, Catherine, that that would be that the strategies and the methods that you're talking about, that kind of pausing and not, we'd say, taking on the child's chaos, but remaining calm yourself and so on, that these are strategies, the stuff that we're going to talk about, are actually things that can be applied to your interaction with either a non-autistic or an autistic child, just so that people are aware of that. Because sometimes people tend to compartmentalize or categorize in autism versus not autism, whereas all of these kind of emotional regulation strategies can absolutely be implemented for the autistic child as well as the non-autistic child. Am I right?
And Sharon, that's actually been part of my journey. Initially I was thinking about, we have autism specific strategies, but like, we're all humans, and we all have needs. We have needs to love and be loved, to connect, to have interests, to follow our passions. Like, we are all the same. Our struggles may be different, but it's all part, I suppose, part of the human condition.
Yeah.
So these are strategies I used for myself about how to calm and regulate myself in all of my adult relationships, my relationships with my children, and in my work. So just, I have found these strategies to be incredibly transformative in all aspects of my life, whether it's my clinical practice or my parenting or just my ordinary everyday interactions.
Perfect. Thank you, Catherine. Can I ask you, Catherine, what kind of impact have you seen on young people specifically due to the current pandemic?
Okay, yeah. So I suppose the biggest thing I'm seeing is, we already know that anxiety is the most common mental health condition for children. Now, the good news is it's also the most treatable. But during pandemic times, I've just seen a dramatic increase in both the prevalence. So, like, more and more young people and adults are presenting as really anxious, but also the severity.
Yeah.
So where somebody might have been coming to someone like me with mild anxiety before, and just seeing much more of that moderate to severe anxiety.
Okay.
And now that the schools are starting to go back, I'm just seeing a big increase in school refusal as well.
Okay. Okay. And are there any kind of very quick tips that you can give people, just even one or two tips just around an initial kind of an anxiety management piece that somebody can engage with if you've got a child who's starting to escalate, or even, I suppose, pointers on how people can identify anxiety in their child when the child isn't presenting in that very school refusal type way almost?
Yeah. So the first thing is looking out for hidden signs of anxiety. We all know the stereotype of anxiety, the child who can't sleep at night and they're talking about their worries. That's just one tiny form of anxiety. So I'd be looking for changes in behavior, changes in toileting, eating, sleeping, explosive anger. Often anxiety is the trigger behind that. Irritability. Think about the things yourself, how you present as anxious. So I tend not to notice when I'm feeling anxious, but what I have is the pain in my tummy.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, and just chatting to your children, or whether it's child partner, chatting to people about, how do you feel anxious? Like, where do you feel it in your body? Just even beginning those conversations, so that then you know what to look out for.
Yeah.
It could be headaches, it could be anything. It could even be like, some children won't be sleeping. For other people, it can be that they're so lethargic, loss of interest.
Yeah.
So I suppose changes in behavior are the big thing,
Yeah.
and opening the conversation. And then I have a 3-step approach to anxiety management, and I use these 3 steps for all emotional and behavioral dysregulation. But for anxiety, what it is first of all, short-term crisis intervention. So what to do in the moment.
Okay.
So anxiety is very contagious. So if you are parenting a child who's feeling anxious, then you are probably going to feel anxious yourself.
Yeah.
So almost the whole house can get anxious. So this is where you practice the pause and get regulated yourself, so that you can be that emotional container. And then starting to work on those anxiety management strategies, whether it's breathing, you've got fast ways to reset your system. So this is move it to lose it. So
Okay.
all of the movement strategies in here, the fastest way to change your state is through movement. So if you can get your kids moving their body for a minimum of 20 minutes a day, that will make a big difference. So I myself know that I need at least 45 minutes of a walk. If I'm feeling anxious, I need at least 45 minutes of a walk before I can feel my nervous system coming back into regulation.
Okay.
So I know that I need a longer period. So again, tuning into what your child needs. Trampoline, jumping, skipping, rough and tumble, all of those kinds of things that are just a bit more high intensity. And
Okay.
then you've got slow ways to reset your system, which would be through the maybe yoga, reading, listening to music, breathing, body scans, listening to guided meditations, those kinds of things, so that you've got the fast ways and the slow ways. But number one is connection.
Okay.
and even you might begin to feel a little bit of irritability in yourself. Oh, here we go again. And again, that's just part, I believe, of this anxiety cycle,
Yeah.
this anxiety dynamic. So again, just regulating yourself so you can do that connection. So that's step one, short-term preventative.
Okay.
Then sorry, that's short-term crisis. And then you've got short-term preventative, which is just planning your day filled with activities so that your child is more likely to be in the green zone, this regulated space. And this is all the good stuff that we all know to do, but it's very hard to do,
Yeah.
which is prioritizing sleep, prioritizing eating well, drinking lots of water, reducing caffeine, connecting with yourself, with your hobbies, with pets, spending time outside, and movement. So that's your kind of, I suppose, if you think of your food pyramid, this is your base, the stuff that's going to make you more likely to be in this green zone, this regulated space. And then step, which is to widen this green zone over time. So this is really building the coping skills, building this sense of, you know, this is hard and you can do hard things. There's a solution to every problem. And this too shall pass. Helping our young people develop a sense of perspective that it's really, really hard now, but it's not going to be forever. So what are the things that you can do to help yourself now? And we know that meditation can help you feel good in the moment, but it takes within about 8 weeks that you actually have changes in the brain, from daily meditation.
Okay.
So I do this hand on heart breathing, and I do this with everybody I work with, where you're literally doing this nurtured heart, feeling the warmth and the
Yeah.
pressure of your hand, like that's step one. And then it's after about 3 weeks of a child doing this every day, they'll begin to notice that the second they put their hands there, they drop into this calmer and more regulated
Fab.
space. So the second I put my hand here, even as I did it, I noticed this change in my nervous system. It actually helps me just drop into this deep green.
Okay.
But that comes through daily practice, and that's how you widen that green zone over time. So
Okay.
that's my 3-step approach. So short-term crisis, short-term preventative, and then long-term change.
Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. So, Catherine, can I ask you, are there any issues you've noticed arising specifically or more frequently in the autistic youth community?
I think anxiety is probably the biggest one. And if a young person hasn't found their tribe yet, I guess an increase in social isolation. So some young people will find their tribe in secondary school, others may find their tribe in college or in work. So, but what is happening, I suppose, the usual support structures aren't in place.
Yeah.
And now I should say that I've noticed some young people really thriving with remote learning, particularly if they were already anxious to begin with, or if they were already experiencing school refusal. Often young autistic people I'm working with are actually doing really, really well.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's important that I acknowledge that, while also saying that for other young people, this has been an extremely difficult time.
Yeah.
And the increase in social isolation, increase in, I suppose, the world shrinking.
Yeah.
That's probably a good way to think about it. The world has shrunk. So it depends on if you're still able to engage in your passion. So if you think we have 3 core needs, one is for, we need connection, we need satisfaction, and we need safety.
Yeah.
So each of those 3 core needs have been greatly impacted by this time. So we've got a reduction in connection. If, let's say, your passion is horse riding, or your
Yeah.
passion is Kodo Dojo or Taekwondo, so that's a reduction in this ability to feel satisfied. And then for safety, obviously, we have messages of threat all around us all of the time. So that's really impacting the core needs. And I think it really depends then on where your starting point was, if you were already feeling anxious or if you were already feeling isolated. So that's where I'm seeing the biggest impact on the autistic community.
Okay, okay. And I suppose when you mentioned that, Catherine, in particular in my head, I'm thinking about these young people who started first year, for example, and who haven't gone back to school yet, but who didn't have enough time to form connections with new sets of peers. And oftentimes, like I find that these young people are most particularly impacted right now by that social isolation piece. And I suppose anxiety as well seems to be rising for people because of this return, this impending return to school. So I suppose like our young people, we can't forget that they are dealing with so many areas of challenge and difficulty that we never had to deal with when we were little, because we never had to, like the reality is that we've never faced a global pandemic before, and opportunities have decreased so much for our young people because of it. I suppose I've no doubt that I'll speak to you again at a later date as as society starts to reopen. With me, like to link in with you maybe around strategies to support people re-engage. But I suppose for now, is there anything that we as parents or as educators or as support people can do to try and maintain some level of equilibrium for these young people whilst they're dealing with all of this?
I'm really glad you brought up about the first year, Sharon, because this is something that I've really noticed myself in my clinical practice. So these young people, they missed out on that last term in sixth class,
Yeah,
which is a very, very special term. Every primary school teacher will tell you about the growth that happens in that period.
yeah,
So there's been a huge loss there, and this conclusion to friendships that just didn't happen.
yeah,
This closure didn't happen. And then starting in first year, and we know how challenging it can be for many people to make friends in first year, to find their tribe. And we also know that it's more challenging to interpret social nuance when wearing masks.
yeah,
It's just an additional stressor. So if we think about all of the stressors that have been layered upon our children and all of us, but for every additional stressor, it actually narrows your green zone.
yeah,
So it means that it's much harder to cope with ordinary everyday things. So in answer to your question about what can we do, well, I noticed myself when things opened up last May, I noticed myself finding it a little bit more challenging and more exhausting to socially interact. So thinking about how can you gradually increase opportunities to socially interact in a way that's safe,
yeah,
making sure that, you think back to my 3-step plan. Step 2 is spending more time in the green zone. So number one thing is exercise. And it's connection with hobbies, spending time outside. It's all of the good stuff. And now it's so basic.
yeah,
And we all know we should do it, but we need to really examine why we're not doing it.
yeah,
What are we doing instead? So for anybody listening right now, I would suggest making a back to basics plan.
yeah,
How can you prioritize sleep? How can you prioritize outside time? How can you prioritize movement? And then gradually increasing social interaction opportunities.
yeah,
Just, and, going step by step by step, and tuning in yourself to your own regulation with these increases, and also working with the young people in your lives to help them tune into, okay, I
yeah,
think I might be feeling a bit anxious now, or I'm feeling really exhausted after this. Okay, that means I might need to have a little slow down later on, or a little bit of chill out time, or time with my pet, whatever it is that helps you, I suppose, refuel,
yeah.
bring that energy back up again.
Yeah, perfect. And I suppose I'm thinking in the context of autism specifically, because social interaction can be an area of greater difficulty to begin with. I suppose it's really important wherever possible that parents help support, or indeed educators or whatever, help support a young person maintain some level of connection with their peers. Be that through watching a movie online together, so two pals watching the movie together at the same time and talking in a chat box, for example. Or I know that in this house that I oftentimes will have to remind one of the kids here in particular to have you rang your friends today? Did you, when was the last time you spoke with them? So I suppose helping to support them and helping them manage that kind of social interaction piece so that they don't lose any social connections that they have already made, do you know?
And I think, bringing it right back to a connection plan.
Yeah,
So if you're talking to the young people in your lives, share that we're a connection seeking species. And within our society, we seem to value some connections over others, but actually talking with your young person about what are the connections they value.
Yeah.
And thinking, okay, what's my connection plan? How can I have more of these types of connections?
Yeah.
So lots of autistic young people I know are really doing well because they're gaming and they're
Yeah.
chatting gaming. And I'm not a huge fan of gaming. However, for lots of young people, it has opened up this new world that, lots of people that they maybe weren't that connected with
Yeah.
before, now they are connected with. And while also you as the adult will need to be really, really mindful about what is happening on screens, the darker side of it,
Yeah.
because I've also seen a big increase in that, this bullying using screens, because we know that the further removed we are from our victim, the easier it is to be harsh.
Yeah.
So while a child might not say something really nasty to somebody's face, it's much easier to say that in a group chat,
Yeah.
in a text. So and also gaming. So if your child is gaming, I would definitely say if you can have it so that they're in the family space, so that you're listening to the chat,
Yeah. Absolutely.
so that you're listening out to say, oh, okay, that doesn't actually sound right. I need to have a conversation with my child to see, do they need some support here? And so it's thinking about a connection plan. What actually fills your child's connection cup,
Yeah.
whether it's with their family, with their friends, with their pets, and watching out for any shrinking of the world, and how can you counteract that?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Catherine. Catherine, can I ask you, what kind of ways can we support our kids in remote learning at the moment? Anything that we can do to make that more manageable for a child who it's not suiting, and particularly for kiddos who might not have the opportunity to go back to school when their peers go back to school in the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I actually did a whole workshop on this. It was 2.5 hours with a second hour follow up, actually. So it's about 3.5 hours, but I'll condense that down into a minute if I can. First step is environment design. How can you set up the environment to be a more pleasant sensory space? So think about all the senses. Think about what kind of seating suits your child best. Is it a chair? Is it a ball? A gym ball, what's the best so that they can get the level of movement they need. Even very basic things like making sure the laptop is at eye level so you're not getting neck strain. Thinking about, I love to use room sprays, so it's nice sensory space, clearing clutter, and just very basic things about environment design. I also like to have focus music playing as well.
Okay.
And so even if your child is in an online class, they can still have this focus music down low, just so it creates a more relaxing vibe for them.
Okay.
And actually having a conversation. How can we make this space nicer for you?
Yeah.
What would make it more pleasant? Also recognizing that being on a screen all day is exhausting for
Mhm.
most people.
Yeah.
So you might see an increase in irritability, an increase in flying off the handle. So putting that in context, giving your teenager, because it's the teenagers now mostly who are at home, giving your teenager an understanding of why this is, that it's actually exhausting. Even giving them that understanding that you also need to counteract that. We know that movement is incredibly protective for mental health, but if you're sitting at a screen all day, getting almost no movement.
Yeah.
So you actually need a movement plan with your child. So like I'd be doing the back to basics plan about environment design, about making it more pleasant, about bringing in more movement, and bringing in screen breaks.
Yeah.
So we know that you're supposed to, every 40 minutes you're supposed to look off into the distance, so you're changing the focal length. But actually lots of our children aren't actually getting the chance to do that.
Yeah.
So even very, very basic things about how can you bring these breaks in.
Yeah.
And we're all going to feel the desire to rely on the sweet stuff, these sugar boosts, but even thinking about how can you be getting boosts with nutritious food that's comforting but that isn't actually unhealthy, so
Yeah.
that you're not layering problems on top. So that's my very short version, and people can check out the workshop. It's just €7. I kept it really, really low cost because I wanted to make it as accessible as possible. And I
Perfect.
do have a checklist in there, how to homeschool without losing your mind.
Fab.
And you can actually go through all the steps that I have in there for environment design, about how to make it more pleasant, more bearable, and more sustainable. So
Perfect.
you can check that out. And if you can't find it, just get in touch with me.
Perfect. Is that on your website, Catherine?
I don't know if I should really have a link to it on my website.
Okay. So I suppose perhaps I can include that on this podcast's
Great,
information
thank you.
piece, if that's
Yeah.
okay. And I suppose just to say as well, Catherine, just as an aside, with regards to that screen time, we invested in blue light glasses here, and all of the children are now wearing blue light glasses when they have to sit, because sometimes you can have 4 hours straight with an hour-long classes and no break in between, and it can cause those awful headaches and so on. And we've definitely found a reduction in any kind of discomfort, headache wise or eye strain wise or eye fatigue wise almost, because of using these blue light glasses. And they're cheap as chips. They're cheap as chips. I think we got a 3 pack for maybe €15. So they're not hugely expensive, but we've seen, I suppose based on our family experience, we've seen a huge increase, or a huge decrease rather, in the impact that screen time has had on my children specifically. So it's worth checking it out. Do you know?
And Sharon, that's a really good example of environment design.
Yeah.
So I also wear blue blockers, and if I forget to put them on, I will normally notice it within an hour. My eyes will start to get more tired.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
and this is why, just thinking, what are the small little changes that you can make to make it just that little bit more pleasant, to
Yeah.
reduce that eye fatigue. And blue blockers are just a perfect example of that environment design.
Perfect. Thanks, Catherine. Catherine, can I ask you, what can we do as parents to support our children's mental well-being given the current climate? Now, outside of that exercise and that sleep and that nutrition piece, is there any other advice you can give me on that?
Well, step one has to be going back to basics, and also teaching everybody in our lives. So I was raised by two psychiatric nurses.
Okay.
So from a very, very young age, it was drilled into me about coping skills,
Okay.
that no matter what the problem is, there's a way to figure it out. And the way I was raised, there's this story, this folklore in my family, that you've got a tree and there's a storm. So what we're in right now is the storm. So one tree by itself, the wind can knock it over. But when you are planting a forest, and if you plant the grove together can withstand the storm. So this is the narrative that I grew up with. So two things, that's the connection and coping skills. So in addition to going right back to basics and actually teaching our children that one of the best things you can do to withstand any crisis is actually go right back to basics, because we know even if there's a death in the family, the number one advice for children is keep the routine going, because
Yeah.
routine is so protective.
Yeah.
It adds that structure, safety, security. And remember that first core need is for safety.
Yeah.
And so going right back to basics with your structure, and then adding in coping skills. One of the mantras I use is there's a solution to every problem.
Yeah.
You just can't see it yet. And the answer is always hidden in plain sight.
Yeah.
And this is where your grove of trees will help you find the answer as well. So thinking about layering on your protective factors.
Yeah.
What are the little things that you can do? And when all else fails, just go to sleep. Sleep is the best medicine. That's another one
Yeah.
of the mantras that I
Yeah.
use, because again, we know that it is linked to positive psychological
Yeah.
well-being. So, and then I suppose this too shall pass. Keeping it in perspective, because when somebody moves into this fixed mindset, it can be hard to see the way out. And whatever you put your attention on grows. So if you're putting your attention on how awful this is, because let's be honest, this is pretty awful.
Yeah.
But if you were putting your attention on that all the time, the awfulness of it would grow. And we have a negativity bias. Like, our brains are set up to actually seek out the negative, to over exaggerate the likelihood and overreact to the importance of it. So that's where our brains are set up, to ensure our survival, but it doesn't ensure our psychological well-being.
Yeah.
So we actually have to actively counteract that. And this isn't about toxic positivity. This is about retraining your brain to begin to look for solutions, to begin to look for good things, so that even if we can't do anything, even if we're stuck at home, even if there's someone in the family who's medically vulnerable, so it means that everybody is stuck at home,
Yeah.
well, then you're saying, okay, what are the little things that I can actually appreciate about this situation? Because you're just trying to counteract that negativity bias. And this is protective for mental health. So, this coping skills, this conflict resolution, and gradually building those skills up are, and I suppose this isn't a quick fix. This is something that you will see the benefits of this after months. And it's little by little by little by little. You were working on neuroplasticity, how the brain is shaped through
Yeah.
experience, little by little, working to shape for a more resilient brain.
Yeah, perfect. No, that perfect. I suppose, Catherine, you mentioned medical vulnerability, and I know that in this house that I'm medically vulnerable, and I know that as a result that movement is far more restricted in our family than what it potentially is in others.
Yeah.
And I suppose just to mention as an aside to somebody who is looking for a quick fix almost, that one of the things that we have actually implemented with each of the children is organising a specific and special and individual activity every single week that I will do with each of the children, so that the children, even if they're feeling negative, even if things are difficult, that they still have something positive to look forward to. And actually, it's a lovely opportunity for me to link in with them about how they feel, and to create the opportunity to kind of have that conversation in a very relaxed and calm way, if that makes sense. And I suppose, while it isn't a quick fix, really, I suppose it's always good to have something to look forward to, particularly if you feel like there's nothing good going on in the world right now.
Yep. And I think that's absolutely fantastic, Sharon. That's a really good example of meeting that third core need, which
Yeah,
is for connection.
yeah,
And also, like, it's that place to rest. We were talking earlier about regulation, and having this one-on-one connection time for a child and a parent together, it allows your child to rest in your love,
yeah,
to regroup, to check in with that grove of trees.
yeah.
And even if there's nothing big coming out of it, it's actually just that being with that allows those big feelings to be processed.
Yeah, absolutely. Is there anything else, Catherine, that you can recommend, we'd say, for a parent or a caregiver to ensure that this connection is made with our young people?
So I used to talk before I had kids, I used to talk about doing 15 minutes of special time with every child every day. And then I had one child and I was
Five.
like, okay, I can just imagine, I can do the 15 minutes. And then as I started adding more and more children, I was like, crikey, 5 children, 15 minutes. So what I've now changed it to, and what the research is showing, is adding connection to ordinary everyday moments.
Yeah,
So making the ordinary extraordinary through connection. So this is where you add rituals to your day. So like Saturday morning could be special breakfast. And it's building this sense of, this is who we are as a family. This is who I am within my first community. So it could be like pancakes on a Saturday morning, or one of the members of my membership, she has instituted Tea Party Thursday.
fab.
And yeah, so it's just very, very simple one-on-one with her 5-year-old. Another parent has instituted Fancy Friday, which is where
Fantastic.
where they get really, really dressed up. The whole family gets dressed up and they light the candles, tablecloth, everything.
Love it.
It's so
I love
simple.
it.
I
I
know. So it's
absolutely
taking,
love it. Yeah,
yeah, it's taking a meal and calling it something. So first of all, making it special, but then making the ordinary extraordinary. So picking something. So in the membership, we talk about Motivation Monday, and it's where people set their intention for the week, and then what are the habits that support that intention. But actually, these themed days have arisen out of that,
cool.
because everybody was saying, how can we have more connection? They hear me talking so much about connection is so protective for mental health, and also because it feels good. So this idea of a themed day has arisen, and I just love seeing how people are making it their own. So that's that strategy. So making the ordinary extraordinary.
Fantastic.
But the more regulated you are yourself as a parent or an educator, the more you were able to help your young people co-regulate.
Yeah.
So if all else fails, drop back into what are the basics for myself,
Yeah.
and then examining things that could be negatively impacting well-being, like too much screen time. Too much screen time yourself as a parent, that's taking you out of presence. So what are the things that we know that are beneficial? We know the presence is, and yet a lot of our daily habits are out of alignment with that. So just, I suppose, regrouping for yourself, anybody who's listening now, just regrouping and saying, okay, what's one area in my life that I can improve? And don't aim for 100%
Yeah.
improvement. Aim for 1% improvement a day.
Okay.
So if you get 1% improvement in the next 24 hours, I'm going to ask everyone to pick one thing to do in the next 24 hours. If you take action within the next 24 hours, you are much, much more likely to sustain it, because we're all consuming loads of content, but not taking any action.
Yeah.
So I want people here taking action. So if you aim for 1% improvement by tomorrow, and then aim for another 1%, and in that way you layer
Yeah.
upon layer upon layer. And I can guarantee you within 1 year, life will be unrecognizable for the better.
Fantastic. I suppose, Catherine, you and I, as parents in very busy households, and actually for any parent really, it is actually really important that we do look at that self-care piece, and that we make sure that we are minding ourselves, because the reality is like, you can't feed your family from an empty fridge, or you can't drink from an empty cup, or whatever the case may be. So I suppose it does speak to us prioritizing our own needs. But I think that parents, particularly who are listening in today, need to realize that self-care isn't a selfish thing, that self-care is actually something that will benefit your whole entire family, and that it is absolutely okay to prioritize your own needs, that it doesn't make you a bad parent, or it doesn't make you somebody who isn't looking after your child by looking after yourself. Because I think that there's a lot of guilt sometimes, and particularly in families where there are autistic children. Sometimes parents feel very, very guilty around looking after themselves, because they feel that they have to devote all of their time to the children in their families.
I'm going to share with you a few things that hopefully will help people with that. So this has been a journey of discovery for me as a parent. I've really come through all of that. Very busy house, and I'm working, so there's lots of guilt around not being available. However, all of my research plus my clinical practice has shown me that self-care is actually the foundation of good parenting.
Mhm.
If you want your children to be self-sacrificing, right throughout their lives, then don't take care of yourself. If you want your children to grow up to be well-rounded humans who have personal interests outside of work or parenting, who have connection with others, who exercise, who sleep well, then be the adult you want your children to become.
Yeah.
So you might think, oh, I've no time for self-care. So what maybe your 1% action from today is to make a list of activities. So make a list of activities that you can do in 10 seconds. So I'm going to give you an example. You can do hand on heart breathing. Put one hand on your heart, one hand on your belly. Breathe in through the nose for 4, and out through the mouth for 6. Do that 3 times, and you work on your vagus nerve, which is deeply calming and regulating. It works on you both at a psychological and a physiological level.
Yeah.
So it'll take you about 10 seconds. So you do have time for that. Then put in activities that take 3 minutes. So you can have 3-minute meditation. So like the 3-minute breathing space, you can get it for free on Insight Timer or YouTube. Then do 10-minute activities, and then right up to 1 hour, because we think of self-care as the bath or a massage or going out for dinner. But actually, we need to think about what are the self-care moments that I can bring into my day. Because, of course, when you're a parent, you don't have much time. When you're parenting a child who needs extra from you. So when you're parenting an autistic child who may need more support to navigate our world that isn't designed for them, then of course you have to give more. But that also means you need to give yourself more. And
Absolutely.
you're right, it isn't selfish. It feels selfish. We have this idea, especially that mothers must be martyrs
Yeah.
and it must be all about sacrifice. And we really need to challenge that, because if you're parenting for the long game, you do have to mind yourself, especially if you're autistic yourself, or if you're parenting an autistic child. It's even more important because the world just isn't set up to support you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Catherine. Catherine, can I ask you, going on a different route again, I know that we do have young people transitioning back to school in the next couple of weeks. I suppose, just very practically speaking, are there any ways that are strategies or suggestions you have around how we as parents or as support people or as educators can help with that transition and make it easier for our young people going back to school?
I suppose name it to tame it, first of all. So naming that this is anxiety provoking. So we know that having your emotions accurately named by another calms the emotional reactivity of the brain. So know that some children are going to be super excited to go back, but even if they're excited, they may also be anxious. So even bringing in this idea that you can feel two things at once, you can have two coexisting feelings, and
Yeah.
that's okay. And then thinking about what are the things that I can add in. So probably increase structure, increase routine, increase advanced preparation, because all of these things reduce possible stress points. And thinking about, okay, what are the things that help my child calm and regulate? So it could be that you're looking at adding in more slow ways to reset your system, or you may feel that your child needs more fast ways to reset your system. So in my own house here, one of my children just needs more movement in the morning
Yeah.
because going back to school has been quite stressful.
Yeah.
So we have to make sure that we have time and space, and to then kind of push out the door, I think you might need a little bit of movement to help you cope with this feeling that you're having right now. So again, this is where those coping strategies are coming in, because also when you're feeling stressed, you don't have quite as much access to your thinking, reasoning brain.
Yeah.
So even though you know the strategies when you're feeling calm, you might not know them in the moment. So this is where this loving other, this parent may be able to help you make the right choices. Or if you're an educator, it's thinking about what are the support strategies you can put in place. And for any parent, I would say get in touch with the school as well. Let them know that your child is feeling anxious. Ask them, maybe they might share some information in advance about where's a Zen den to go to, a calm space to be. Is there any key contact person? So I'm working on those plans with young people in my clinic right now, where there is actually a key adult in the school being identified as a go-to person.
Yeah.
So again, these are all the support structures. So you're looking at the environment, support structures, plus personal coping skills, but what your young person can do to help themselves. And sometimes what can happen is all of the attention is put on what the young person can do to help themselves, but actually it's the supportive environment and the supportive adults that can actually make all the difference, because we just don't have the same access to our thinking brains when we're feeling anxious.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose, Catherine, I would always speak in any training or in any classes that I deliver around identifying safe spaces and safe go-to people. And I suppose it's essential that people realize that, again, that isn't just a strategy for autistic students or autistic young people, that absolutely every kid will benefit from having access to a safe space where they can go to decompress if they need to, and to not just one safe person actually, but to have a number of different safe people identified, so that there's always going to be somebody available to that young person, even if someone is out sick or whatever the case may be. And I suppose with regards to both of those, though, too, that it'd be important that kids who are autistic are taught explicitly how to access those safe people and safe spaces as well. But I suppose ultimately my point would be that these are strategies that we use for both autistic and non-autistic kiddos, again, not just the autistic child.
Yeah, and isn't this the human condition? If you have a difficult day, isn't there usually someplace you go and someone you ring?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Catherine, can you tell me a little bit about your free parents club?
Yes, so you can sign up to get on my free parents club. It's just where I email you tips, just very, very easy tips to put into place so that you can get that 1% improvement. And look, parenting, it's amazing and it's really, really challenging. And I think we can all do with that extra little bit of support. Like, we were never meant to do this alone. We were meant to have our grove of trees around us as parents as well, but unfortunately, the way modern life is set up, we're much more isolated. We don't have that grove of trees, that real strong supportive network. So I set up two things to help people with this. One is the Free Parent Club, which is just where I email you tips. And these tips come from my practice, but also from questions that I get from parents. I just look for common questions, and then I'll prepare something to help other parents who may be experiencing the same thing. And then the other thing is my parenting membership.
Okay.
Reclaim Parenthood. And
Good.
this is a space where I do regular masterclasses, and I have guest experts coming in, and I also do Q&A sessions. So they're live and interactive. We're on Zoom, and I also stream them into our private Facebook group. And you also get access to all of my past masterclasses and Q&A sessions. And I have videos ranging from 2 minutes to 12 minutes to an hour and a half, just
Cool.
on common parenting issues. And the reason it's a membership and not just one-off classes is because parenting isn't done in a month. I know I certainly have to work at it all of the time, depending on what's going on in my life.
Mhm.
And what I've noticed is that parents who are in the membership who've been there now since the beginning, so it's there since September,
Okay.
and the transformations that people are reporting have just blown me away. Because all of the kinds of things that I'm talking about here today about regulation and nervous system, like, this isn't stuff that's in our folk wisdom.
Yeah.
It's new for a lot of people. We hear all about stickers and star charts and naughty steps and timeouts and punishment and all of those kinds of things, which actually aren't in line with what we know about human relationships and the nervous system. So the reason I have this membership set up is that it's a space where people can explore and try out this method of parenting and actually see how effective it is, but also have a space where they can come and get support and expert advice on how to apply it to their personal situation.
Fantastic. I suppose, Catherine, just as an aside, you mentioned their discipline and
Yes.
we'd say reward charts. I actually can't even articulate now about some of the stuff you've just spoken about. But I suppose I'd really love for you to explain to people this word discipline, quite literally, because immediately, the minute that somebody hears the word discipline, people think about giving out to a child or reprimanding a child or that naughty step or unfortunately, smacking or slapping a little person's bum or whatever the case may be, all of which aren't okay. I'd love for you to explain to people what discipline actually means and how we can implement discipline in the correct way.
So discipline literally means to teach. I don't know where it came up that discipline meant to punish.
Yeah.
And this isn't meant to shame any parent. You know, you may have been raised a totally different way, and the research has come on and come on and come on and come on. And what it has shown us is that the most effective discipline method and the most effective parenting method is high structure, high nurture.
Yeah.
Now, what this means is where you follow your child's lead where possible, but also you take charge where necessary. So, people are sometimes shocked. They expect me to say that I don't recommend punishment because, look, the research on punishment is clear. It's ineffective and it can lead to unintended consequences. And if punishment really worked, we wouldn't have such a high recidivism rate of, people committing crimes when they come out of prison.
Yeah.
So we know it doesn't work. And then, but parents are like, okay, what's left unsaid? Can I still use praise and star charts? But actually, when you think about it, rewards and punishment, they're two sides of the same coin.
Mm-hmm.
They're both about control. And they don't actually change the brain for the better. So rewards and star charts, they can feel good in the moment. There's no question about that. And you can get a short-term positive effect. But I'm interested in changing the brain for the long term.
Yeah.
I'm interested in how to raise self-disciplined adults who don't need the rewards, who actually do it because it feels good, it feels the right thing to do. So I have a 3-step approach. Again, I love my 3 steps. I have a 3-step approach when I'm trying to decide on any intervention. How would I feel if my husband used the strategy on me? Now, I can tell you, if he used a star chart on me, I don't think it would go down too well. And if he told me to go and sit in a chair and think about what I'd done, I can tell you I wouldn't be thinking about what I had done. I'd be thinking about what I'm going to do. So that's it. How
Absolutely.
would I feel? How would I feel if my husband did it on me? How would I feel if my boss used the strategy on me, which is someone in a position of power? And how would I feel if my best friend used the strategy on me?
Okay.
So if it doesn't pass any of those three questions, then I do not use it and I do not recommend it. We need to come right back into a relationship-based approach to discipline, which means to teach. Everybody needs to learn things. And, our goal as parents is not to shape our children, it's to allow them to unfold into who they were meant to be all along
Yeah.
with, with us giving them our wisdom. So, for example, like let's say common thing, siblings fighting. What does this actually mean? This discipline means to teach, and we're all like, tearing our hair out when our kids are fighting. It's really, really activating. So step one is get calm yourself
Yeah.
and, soften your facial expression, your body language, because really we want to come in like this, because our mama bear or our dada bear gets activated, because one of our children is being hurt. I can guarantee you if you rush in, you'll probably assess the situation wrong and you'll add more fuel to the fire, because you won't have any idea about what's gone on before. So what you do is you go there and you think, okay, I'm going to give them my well-regulated brain to help them develop their conflict resolution skills. So you go in and you say, okay, so you stop all hurtful actions, but you try and bring them close because you're going to try and add in connection again. So straight away, your connection is going to help defuse things. And you want to be equidistant between them, so you're not taking sides.
Sides, yeah.
So you say, okay, tell me what seems to be the problem, and you do name it to tame it, and you name their feelings. You seem really angry and you seem really upset, so that again you're trying to defuse. Okay, and then you ask them to tell you what's going on, and you say, I know it's not okay to hit, so tell me what's happening. So that was setting the boundary. So you're saying yes to the feelings even as you say no to the behavior. And then you say, now tell me what seems to be the problem, and you get each child to tell you without judgment. And even if they're saying something that seems ludicrous, they say, oh, okay, let me see if I have the problem. And you reflect back what they've both said and say, now, okay, we know there's a solution to every problem. So we've got to figure out what's the solution to this problem. And you're presenting, the brain loves a question. So you're presenting a question to activate the thinking brain to come back online.
Cool.
And you're trying to get them to brainstorm solutions, and you say, okay, yeah, you could have the Lego forever. Okay, yeah, that's one solution. How would you feel about that? You'd feel really good. How would you feel? Oh yeah, you're not happy about that. Okay, so that's a win-lose solution. We need to keep going to get a win-win.
Cool.
And then, or if one child has really wronged another, you can be like, look, I know it's not okay to hate. I can see why you did in that moment, and what can you do to make it right? So again, you're giving this idea of we clean up our own messes, whether they're physical messes like spilled milk or emotional messes like in a relationship.
Cool, cool. Great advice, Catherine. I suppose just to, yet again, I'm a great person for, as an aside, but I suppose one of the people that I would regularly link in with is Yvonne Newbold, the author of the Special Parents Handbook. And she'd also navigate kind of emotional and physical response and behaviours and so on for the NHS in the UK and so on. And what she actually recommends for parents who find that they find it difficult not to respond in a very, what in the name of goodness is going on? We're using that kind of a tone, that sometimes if you actually whisper loudly, that it's not possible to shout. It's not possible to raise your voice when you're whispering even loudly. And when you do that, there's an automatic kind of a notice of you, like that the kids will automatically notice you because they're going, what in the name of goodness? This one is whispering here. But second of all, it allows for you to keep and maintain that level of equilibrium and calm that you need to be able to engage with these kiddos and not come at it from a kind of a cross point of view. So I suppose that's just a tip from another wonderful professional in the field.
Yeah, and it just automatically just brings down the
Exactly.
level.
Brings that energy level back down so that there's not that continued escalation.
Now, I would say Sharon, she probably hasn't ever seen an Irish mammy doing discipline in mass with
Oh.
So maybe it depends on the tone that
Maybe
you're
the tone
whispering
of the whisper as well. Absolutely. I think fair point, Catherine. Fair point. Catherine, would you explain to me actually about your programs, about the Reclaim
Yeah.
Parenthood initiative and the Free Parents Club, how people can get involved in these programs?
Okay, so the you can sign up to the Free Parent Club on my website. That's easy peasy. You could just put in your email address, and you'll hear from me. Sometimes very regularly, other times a little bit further apart. Then for Reclaim Parenthood, just get in touch with me to join.
Okay.
There's a link to get on the waiting list on my website, or you can just contact me on Facebook, Catherine Hallissey, psychologist.
Okay.
I also have workshops coming up as well,
Yeah.
standalone workshops. So I've one on sound sleep. So
Oh, cool.
it's really, really suitable for parents of autistic kids or anyone parenting a child who's struggling with sleep. And we know that sleep can be more challenging for autistic people. So it's about really, really good strategies that I've been using myself, that I've learned from the research, but I've also been using with families in my clinic. So that's one thing. I have lots of other things coming up as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
but the details aren't finalized yet. But the best way to find out is either my website, catherinehallisey.com, or to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram.
So catherinehallisey.com, and your Facebook and Instagram handles are
Just Catherine.Hallissey, I think, on Instagram. I should know that. And Catherine Hallissey, psychologist, on Facebook.
on Facebook, but I can share a link to those as well on the
Wonderful.
information around this. So people have lots to look forward to in the near future that are currently being finalised from yourself.
Yeah, and I've loads of really exciting guest experts as well coming into the membership. Like tonight, I have Jess Kennedy,
Fab,
OT, doing a
fab,
session on sensory strategies to make life easier. And
fantastic.
yeah, so that's really, really exciting. And these again are based on issues that are coming up for members. Then I will bring in somebody else as well to just share their expertise, a little bit like you're doing, Sharon, bringing in different people to share their expertise. That's very exciting.
Cool, cool. I can't wait to see what's coming up down the line or coming online into the future. Looking forward to it. Can I ask you, wait, so for people to find out more about you, is it through your Facebook and your Instagram, or is there anywhere else that they can? Do you have any video clips? Is there a YouTube channel that people can look up, or whatever the case may be?
I have lots of videos on my Facebook page, and I'm beginning to put my media appearances on my website as well. So you
Great.
can see some of my latest news segments on my website. And there will be some more things coming in the future. But
Okay.
I'm always blabbing things before they're ready. So I'm going to do my best not to say this stuff.
No, that's fine. I suppose I just want to make sure that people know how to find you and how to like to kind of get a feel, a proper
I
feel
have
for the stuff that you do and stuff.
I have something coming up on school refusal as well.
Cool.
So people who've signed up to my free parent club will be able to get access to this,
Okay.
because I suppose that's one of the biggest issues that I'm seeing right now, right across the board.
Yeah.
And I'll have some more free stuff as well coming up on anxiety. So I do lots of videos,
Yeah.
because I just love the interaction with people
Yeah.
and being able to talk and respond in this way. So yeah, definitely lots of stuff on Facebook, but there'll be more and more on my website. So
Okay.
catherinehalsey.com.
Okay, and people should sign up for your free parenting club, free parents club, in order to access initial information, and then
Yeah.
they can kind of take a deeper dive in the Reclaim Parent Initiative as
Yeah,
well.
like the best way really is to be on the Free Parents Club, because we all know with Facebook and Instagram you only see a tiny percentage.
Absolutely.
So lots of people have said to me, oh, I missed your class on such and such, and but if you sign up to the email, you'll be guaranteed to get notified.
Perfect, perfect. Catherine, one last question for you. So, what is the most crucial piece of advice? I'm going to come right back to autism at the very end of this. What is the most crucial piece of advice you can give to a parent helping their young person through their autism journey?
I think recognizing that you are the most powerful force in your child's life. For your child to feel your acceptance of every part of them, right down to your bones, it's so transformative and it's so powerful, and it really equips them to face all of the challenges that they will experience in the world. So that's the first thing. And that really shows how important it is that you mind yourself,
Yeah.
because it's so that you can be that most incredible source of acceptance, so that your child can rest in your love. And then the next thing is really just, I think, really developing your understanding of autism, so that your child can totally accept and love every aspect of themselves, even the things they find challenging. Because look, everybody finds some things challenging. However, what often happens with autism, it's like autism becomes the enemy. However, autism is your child's essence.
Yeah.
It's part of their essence. So it's really about I think then taking this nervous system approach to parenting, this brain-based approach to parenting, which is all about resilience and equipping your child with the skills that they will need to thrive and succeed in life. I think that is really, I suppose, the essence of my approach to working with autistic people.
Catherine, thank you so, so much for today.
You are welcome. It's been an honor, Sharon.